Hi, I'm Clark Mercer, and this is a demonstration of the application called PWSafe that many of us use at National Weather Service and in Western Region headquarters. This is the website, PWSafe.org. We've been using it for quite some time, and I wanted to show you this comparison graphic that I made up of the old version versus the new. On the left is the older version, and on the right is the newer version. As you can see, it looks quite a bit different. And it is somewhat different looking, although you can make it look like the old version. But the biggest feature is actually the new security of the PWSafe encryption. It uses a different algorithm, and it says here academically reviewed and found to be secure. Now this new version of the software is backwards compatible, so all your old password safes that you've created with this older version can be opened with the new software. But to fully take advantage of the new security, you would have to export the entries and then re-import them into a new version of that database. My favorite feature is the find and search. When you have a large database with a lot of entries, it may be hard to find something quickly. As you can see down here, I've got the find box, which may or may not be shown by default, but if it's not, you can hit Control F to show the box, or click Edit Find, and then type what you're looking for. It automatically saves new entries, and as you can see here, you can nest entries and group them for better organization. One of the great things is it helps enforce password complexity, and you can generate passwords meeting that complexity, and I'll demonstrate that. And obviously this new version is compatible with the latest versions of Windows. Here I'm going to demonstrate by opening the software, and then by default it remembers your previous databases that you've opened, or you can click this ... to open a password safe. And I'm going to open this demonstration password safe. Type in my combination. Now here is the safe. This looks a little bit different than you're used to, but like I said, you can click View and show it a flattened list. Right now I'm on the nested tree view. This flattened list is more like the legacy view. You can see the title and the username. And actually it has many more columns for last modified, last accessed, etc. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the nested tree view. And some of this view stuff you can play around with. The classic toolbar here gives it the classic icon so it looks like it used to. I'm going to go with the new toolbar because I think that it looks a little bit better. And then the view show find. Like I mentioned, I can close that or hit Control F, and then I can search for something. As you can see, it found Hotmail. Let me open one of these entries. Much of this stuff is just like the old version, it's just improved. So here you see the password. I can click Show and it will show it. On the Additional tab, I see that there is a password history, and this particular entry is chosen to keep 20 passwords. You see this is a previous password here, password 00 pound pound. The current password is password 00 pound pound exclamation exclamation. Now if I was to change that by deleting the pound pound exclamation exclamation and click OK, then I come back into it, Edit View, I see that the password has been updated, and on the Additional tab I now see the new entry in the history, and this will keep your running history. You can clear it here, and there's a lot of different options you can play around with. I'm not going to demonstrate everything, but I could also just generate a new password. Password 00 is not very secure, so let me click Generate. Now that just generated a password. If I click OK, go back into it, there's my generated password, and you can see I've got the password history there. It generated that password based on the password policy that I have in place. You can see here there's a password policy tab, and it's set to use this policy that I've set up individually on this entry. I can also set it to use a database policy, and you can create database policies, and in addition to the default policy, or you can modify the default policy, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. This date and times tab is actually really useful as well. You can, by default it's set to never, and that just means that it's not used. But if you want to expire it on a certain date, you can choose that date here. But the most useful one here is I can say, no, I want this password to expire in 58 days, and I want that to reoccur. And that way you'll have a visual indicator when you open the password safe that that password has expired. You can also set it to notify you when you open the password safe of all the passwords that are expired. So now I'm going to demonstrate how you set the password policy on the database itself. So I'm going to cancel out of this, and you go to Manage and Generate Password. Actually, Generate Password is the password generator, and you can generate it based on a policy. What I want to demonstrate is Manage Password Policies. You can see this is the default password policy, and here are the standards that it must abide by. It has to be 12 characters in length, and it has to have one of lower, one of upper, one digit, etc. Now I can modify this default policy by selecting it and clicking Edit, or I can create a new policy. Call it NOAA. Password length, this is going to be 16 character minimum, and I want to use at least one lower, one upper, one digit, and one symbol. Now symbols are kind of tricky because some of them can be a little bit difficult, and this program allows you to only use certain symbols if you choose, or the default set, which it shows here. Now if I want to use a special set or a subset, I can click there, and let's say I don't like the period, so I want to leave it out. Well, I can do plus minus equals at pound dollar percent, just like that. All these ones that it has, I can enter them in, or a subset, and I can say, okay, those are the ones that I want to use. I don't want to use any of these other ones because they're difficult to read. Okay. So, and then some of these options here are mutually exclusive from these options, so you can either use easy to read or you can use some of these options. This is the way I prefer to set it up, so that it has the upper, lower, special, and number. So let's click OK on that. Now I can see there's the NOAA policy, 16 characters in length, and there's the default policy. Okay, test selected policy. Let's test it. Generate, generate, generate. I can generate those, and then I can copy it to the clipboard, and then I can paste it somewhere, say in the notepad. Now security is always on everybody's mind, and if I have a password on the clipboard and then I forget about it, isn't that less secure? Well, let's click OK on this, and let's close that, and now let's click paste. I was clicking Control V and it was not working. Let's click paste, and as you can see, it doesn't actually paste anything. It actually cleared the clipboard, which is a nice feature. Now one of the other features that I'm not so keen on is that when you close it, by default, it doesn't actually close the application. It shrinks it down to the system tray where you can see it here. Then I can double click on it and open it back up. If I click there, it closes back down to the system tray again. And that's not a big deal, but if you don't know that and you go to open the software again, looks like it's going to open. I'm going to type in my combination, and I get this that says it's apparently being used. Would you like to open it in read only or read write if you're certain no one else is using it? Now you really don't want to open it read write if it's already in use by somebody, so I'm going to exit it. Now I could have opened it read only, but what I want to do is close it out of the system tray. Do you really want to save changes and exit? Yes. Okay, so now I'm going to open the program, enter in the combination. Now what I want to do is go to my options, manage options, and that is on the System tab. Put icon in System Tray. I don't want to put it in the System Tray, so I'm going to click OK on that and close it. Now you can see it's not in the System Tray, and if I open it again, it works as most people would expect. And that's just a personal preference, but most users are going to like that option. Let me show you some of the other options that are really nice in here. Manage, Options. One of the great features is it automatically does backups for you, and you can choose how those backups are done, or you can say don't do backups. But by default, it increments it by a number, and you can change the suffix, whether it's a number or the date, and you can tell it how many you want to save. Say I want to save 10 of them. By default, it saves it in the same folder as the database, and I can show you here. There's the PWSafe database, and here's some of the backups. But if I don't want to do that, I can choose another location, say the desktop. But let's just leave the default there. So that's the Backup tab. The Display tab has some useful features on it, but I'm not going to go into those. There's a lot of features on here you'll see that you can kind of set it and forget it, but many of the defaults actually will work well for people, other than, as I said, the System Tray option and maybe the password complexity people want to change. Also, the password history is a nice option to change, and I'll show you where to do that. On the Miscellaneous tab, this has got a couple things that you can look at. The Password History tab is where you tell it to save by default, and this is the default option, is it doesn't save. Okay, so what it's going to look like by default when you come in here, Manage, Options, Password History, it's going to not save. So what I want to do is save the last 20 passwords. Now down here it says, what about the current entries? You don't want to change them? Do you want to start saving previous passwords? And I want to start saving the previous passwords for all entries that are in this database. So I'm going to choose that and leave that at 20. Click OK. And it tells you that it's changed 4 entries to keep that password history. So now let's go back into the options. So that's the Password History tab. Now I already showed you the System tab with the system icon. There's a couple other options here. Recent databases to display. This is when you first open the program. It'll show you your history. You can choose not to do that if you wish. Let's choose 0 there. Again, there's a lot of options in here that I'm not going to show, but I want to touch on some of the basics here. And this is the security that's set by default. Clear the clipboard upon minimize. That's a nice one. Lock the password safe on minimize. Or by default it locks after 5 minutes of idle time. So these are just some of the options that you can change. Let me click through here and see what the other ones are. Okay, so that's kind of a basic overview of the options there. Let me go back and show you on the password policies. Okay, so I've got these 2 password policies. Now I can generate passwords here to test. But if I want to go to the password generator, I can go Manage, Generate Password. And then I can either use a named policy or just create something on the fly. So I'm going to use this no policy, and then I'm going to click Generate. If I don't like the look of that, I click Generate again and again and again until I get a password that I like but meets the complexity requirements. Or I can just do something here where I want to do 2 of each and then generate. Okay, so that's password generation. You can also do it on each entry. So let me show you here. I've got this entry for work email. Let me show you the password. It says my password. Let's check the history tab. It says keep the last 20 because we chose that option to apply to all entries in the database. Let me just click generate. See, that just generated a password based on the policy that was selected on this tab, which is the default policy. But actually, I can choose NOAA and apply, go back, generate. Now that's the 16-character NOAA password policy. And I can choose one until I like it. and then I go back in, and you can see it shows that old password that I generated that I don't like, as well as my original password that wasn't very secure at all. Okay, to wrap things up, I just wanted to demonstrate 3 final features. As you see, when I open the database, there's nothing shown there. I have to browse to the database by clicking the ... finding it, and opening it. That's because of an option I chose earlier. If I don't like that option and I want it to remember the last database that I opened, which is the default actually, I can change that back. It's in Manage Options on the System tab, remember the last 0 databases. So I can change that back to the default, which was 4. If I click OK and close, the next time I open it, you'll see in the drop down the history of the last database that I opened. So I don't have to browse for it each time. Let's go ahead and open it. Now another feature here on Manage Options, on the System tab, open the database read-only by default. Now this is to prevent you from accidentally changing entries that you didn't mean to change. So let's check that option and click OK and see what happens. Next time I open it, this box here is checked Open as read-only. I can toggle that on and off each time as I want, but that option selects that by default. So let's see what it does. Now this is in read-only mode, so when I edit view, I can see the password, but I can't change it. I can see the notes, but when I hit delete, I can't change it. By the way, the notes here are hidden until you click on them, which is kind of a nice security feature as well. See, it says this is my old email. When I unclick it, it says its notes are hidden. You have to click in there in order to see what the notes say. So now I want to change that entry. How do I switch back? If I click File, I've got this Change to Read Write, and that will toggle based on which mode you're in, Read Only or Read Write. So I can go Change to Read Write. I have to enter in the combination, and now I'm on Read Write mode. If I want to go back to Read Only mode, I can change back to Read Only, and now I'm in Read Only. Every time you go to Read Write, it will prompt you for that combination, and let's say now I want to change it. Now I can change the entry. Now I've changed it. I want to go back to Read Only. Now I'm on Read Only. Now I can't change anything. It's not allowing me to delete that. So that's kind of a handy feature. Let me show you one final feature. Not generate password. I get clicking too fast. Okay, Manage Options. Now this is on the Display tab, and what I want it to do is warn me 7 days before passwords expire. You can change that to however many days, but I want it to warn me 1 week before passwords expire. So let's click OK. You may have noticed this bank demo icon is actually red, and that indicates that the password is expired. Green means it's not expired, and that is a function of this Date and Time tab. You see here it's set to expire today, and it's grayed out because I'm in read-only mode right now. And this Hotmail one, it is set to expire every 58 days recurring. As you can see, the statistics here, it was last changed today, and it doesn't expire for 58 days. So I've got this red entry indicating that the password is expired, and you can see these other entries, they're all green. But with that feature on to warn 7 days before, let me open the program again, enter in my combination. What it's going to do is say some of the entries have expired passwords. Do you wish to list them? I can just click no and not list them, or I can click yes and it shows me which ones are expired. And then on the fly I can double click it and change it if I wish, or just do nothing about it and continue into the program as normal. That wraps up kind of a brief summary of this program. Hopefully you can see the power of the new version and maybe take advantage of some of these features. Thanks for watching.